Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Being Spiritual with me, your host, Ashley Robinson, live on Facebook and YouTube with Spiritual Psychics TV. A warm and very special welcome to anyone joining us for the first time, and also an encouraging welcome to all of you who continue to come back. Your love and your energy very much appreciated. So, folks, what are we up to tonight? Well, tonight we're chatting about spiritual and spiritualist philosophy, in particular, my own philosophy. And today's subject will be a little bit about religion, as I know and understand them, Christianity from my point of view, and why I think it's compatible with my spiritual beliefs. And of course, like everything I do, it will be with the caveat that this is just but my honest, humble opinion. It means no offense. So if you are joining us on YouTube tonight, give us a hi, give us a wave, let us know where you're watching the show from. In order to do that, you need to have logged in with your YouTube or Google account and participate in the live chat. While you're doing that, you can also give us the thumbs up and you can share the stream to all of those popular social media channels. And for those of you on Facebook, you just need to simply comment on the mainstream feed and write into the wall. And it'd be lovely to hear from you too. We'll do a couple of shout outs in a little while, but let us know whether or not it is your first time, and let us know where you're perhaps watching the show from tonight, because it's Friday the 4th of June. We're into summer. We have had in the UK some beautiful days of sunshine. Today a little bit darker and a little bit wetter, but nonetheless onwards, upwards, and into summer. It's one of my favourite time of year as we come out of spring and something coming to life. I'm a little bit like a solar panel, and I generally work better in the sun. So it's good to see you all with us tonight. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being on Being Spiritual with me, Ashley Robinson. So I'm going to do a couple of hellos and welcomes. I should also, in some way, provoke you. So I'll be doing a little bit of challenging the status quo, perhaps, today, but I'm really keen on your thoughts. I'm really keen on your opinions. So you absolutely don't have to agree with anything I say. I'll be really keen for you to share your thoughts on the subject of religion and religions and spiritualism in general. And also, if you want to share any little stories, then we'll read that out too. We'll probably spend the next 20-25 minutes talking a little bit about my sort of foundation beliefs, and then we're going to open it up and we're going to do some questions, and you have an opportunity to ask Ash anything. I want to say a special thank you to Richard James, our producer, for putting on this show. He does so much brilliant work both during the live production and also behind the scenes. So if you haven't already checked out and liked all of those social media channels, do find Spiritual Psychics TV across all those platforms. Do visit the new website. There's an amazing function on there, the new directory, which points you in the right direction of all your local mediums, churches, healers, centers, all sorts of things going on, loads of different events, both online events and events in person. So do check out that website too. And of course, if you haven't already found me, then please do at Ash Robinson Medium. So we'll now do a couple of hellos and welcomes. But as I say, great to have people joining us. So Amanda Pentelo says hello from Northants. Hi, Amanda. Dad says, my dad, Ray. Good evening, Ash. Love mum and dad. Hello, mum and dad. Cheryl Flint joining us on Facebook says, good evening. First time watching. Good evening to you. Hi, Debbie from Malden, just round the corner from me. Hi, Debbie. Lisa Davis. I'm doing well. Thank you, Lisa. Hope you are too. Kelly McKeaton. Good to hear from you tonight. Welcome. Shauna Dore from Ireland. Hiya, Shauna. Linda Fox watched last night. Now looking forward to tonight. Hi, Linda. That was mediumship with Bill Hughes and I on Bill's show. Great show there. Thank you, Linda. Good to see you. Joanna Wheeler says, first time watching. Hiya, Joanna. We're talking spiritualist philosophy tonight. Saturday, 5 a.m. in Melbourne, Australia. And we got Wendy watching us. Well, welcome, Wendy. I don't know if you've stayed up late or got up early, but welcome to you. Mary Green says, hi. Good evening, Mary. Michelle Leah Murray. Hi, Ashley. Thank you for your time watching from Surrey. Lovely. Hiya. Hiya, Tina Brown. Melinda, first time. Hiya, Melinda. Sandra Clifton from Wimbledon, just round the corner. That's my home church, Wimbledon. Joanne Lewis says hi to Richard. Hi, everyone. Hiya, Joanne. Cheryl Johnson would love a message tonight. Cheryl, we're not doing any mediumship tonight. We did last night, and we're doing mediumship tomorrow night too from 8 p.m. Tonight's more about questions and answers and spiritual philosophy. Amanda Seif Groom says, good evening, Ashley. Hiya, Amanda. Linda Paris, not having the best day. I'm very depressed. Happy to be here. Always feel better with you guys. Well, Lisa, I am sorry to hear that. Thank you for joining us. And if it's okay, Lisa, I would love to send you some absolute healing, some love and light. And I'm sure you'll get that from the group. Benny Ty. Hey, Benny. Good old Jim. Hey, James. Welcome. Suru. Hiya. Mary Dixie. Good evening. Olivia Louise Funwood. Good evening, Olivia. Welcome tonight. Alison Turnbull, hiya. Leanne, hello from rainy London. It's certainly been wet, hasn't it? You wouldn't think this week belonged together. Lynn Addis says hi. Hiya, Lynn. Welcome. Deirdre McBee, good evening. Hiya, Deirdre. Or Deirdre, sorry. Amanda, hiya. Sandra Clifton, good evening to you too. Welcome. Kerry Morgan, hiya. Julie Caswell, the lovely Julie. Hiya, Julie. And Clive. Hi, Clive. Welcome. Penny here. Hello, Penny. I'm glad you gave me your name, so I didn't have to pronounce the YouTube username. Nicola Humphreys. Hiya. And Rose Anderson. Lovely Rosie, the Queen of Cards. Siobhan Rook. Hiya, Ashley, from Ireland. A couple of links from Ireland today. Lovely. Jean Cotrin Duffy. Hiya, Jean. Ian Mason. How the devil are you, sir? Wonderful medium and friend Ian Mason. Good evening, Ian. Martin Meave from Belgium. Good evening, Martin. Hugo. Good evening. Hi. Lots of new names today, so lots of people have not seen the names before, so pleased we've been able to give most of you a shout out. I can't get round to everybody, but there's a g'day there from Tasmania, Australia. Hiya, Cherie. Chloe from Mitcham. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? We've got people that's pretty much as far from me where you can get, and I've got people just around the corner. But few Aussies, few people from the other side of the pond. Lovely to have you all there. Getting very early or late night fuel. And Essex. And Sylvia Freeston, good evening to you. Right, well, we've just gone 12 minutes past 8 now. I hope I've got round to most of you. I'm sorry if I didn't particularly mention your name, but a special welcome to you. So tonight's show then, for all those newbies, being spiritual, I've been taking people on a journey almost for about a year now, every other week, taking people through my own sort of spiritual foundation beliefs, my own philosophy, the things that have been found to be true to me. Hiya, DM. And we've covered all sorts of different subjects. And tonight in particular, I want to talk a little bit about religion in general and spiritualism in terms of what it means to me. And, you know, in order to do that, there's a number of things I need to make, a number of sort of working assumptions, if you like. So the first thing is I'm about 38 years old now, and I've been brought up in spiritualism. My mum and dad, who are watching tonight, Ray and Jackie Robinson, who are based at Wimbledon and Hatbridge Spiritualist churches in South London, have brought me up within spiritualism. So I feel I'm blessed to have had spiritualism as very much a foundation. But as an individual, I've given own labels to myself in terms of describing my own religion. And there are different labels within my own family, which I'll talk about. So the first thing is that for most of my younger sort of years, I used to refer to myself as a Christian spiritualist. In part, this was because my father was the general manager of the Christian spiritualist organization called the Greater World, who followed and adhered to the teachings of the wonderful messenger Zodiac. I'm very proud to call myself a Christian spiritualist. These days, I tend to just call myself a spiritualist, and I don't mean just call myself a spiritualist. I've kind of taken out the word Christian because of my own interpretations of Christianity, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that and some of the things that have influenced me, both sort of positive and negative. And I certainly the things I'm going to be talking about, I mean, it is no criticism to any of you, because my wife, who is half Irish, is Catholic. She is also a qualified spiritualist healer. She trained with the lovely Leslie Knight at Women's Spiritualist Church, which was a 2-year training course registered with United Spiritualists. But she would still refer to herself as a Catholic. In fact, when the census came out recently, she put Catholic and I put spiritualist. And then we had a conversation about our 2 boys. And in the end, we put one down as a spiritualist Catholic and the other as a Catholic spiritualist. And we did that for a number of reasons. First thing is that we recognize their own right to sort of grow up and believe what they want, but we're going to thread in the things that we have found to be true. And religion, for me, can also be far more than just a religion. It can be a way of life. It can be part of a culture. Both my boys are going to a Catholic primary school, and they have been christened Catholics, as well as going through baptism in Spiritualist Church and receiving spiritual sort of names as part of a naming service. So labels for me are private. They belong to each of us, and it's absolutely okay to call yourself whatever you want, even if you don't have a label for it. But some of the things that I'm going to talk about today are where Christianity and other religions for me are absolutely compatible with spiritualism, and perhaps where spiritualism has not been found to be compatible with certain texts or certain books. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm really keen to get your comments. If I see comments come in as they do, great. If not, I'm going to shut up in about 15-20 minutes anyway, and I'm going to go through, and I've got an ambition to answer sort of all of your questions. Now, in order to talk a little bit about religion, I'm going to just quickly cover off a subject which we covered on my very first show, which you can find in all good YouTube stores and of course on the Spiritual Psychics TV archives on Facebook. But our first show, oh hiya Rachel Brown, our first show was What is God? And do check out that show if you're interested. But ultimately, I gave the opinion that for me, God was a word to describe the sum combination, the sum of all energy, all particles, everything in the universe. And I spoke a little bit about the names I use for God, God being one of them. I also spoke about the fact that for a long time, certainly again as a youngster, I saw God perhaps in my own mirror, in my mind's eye, as a he. And I referred to God as a him, as a he. And as I got a little bit older, I suddenly thought, well, I don't really see God as a person at all. A little bit later in life, probably by the time I was a teenager, I used to talk about I've totally lost my thread there, but I saw a comment from Deanne. She said, I had kids christened in the Christian Spiritualist Church. Lovely. Thank you, Deanne. Where was I? I've totally lost my track. I'll have to go back to where I was. I don't know if Richard was paying attention. He can remind me. I don't know why I was suddenly thrown. We were talking about my my upbringing, wasn't we? And the churches and the labels. Oh yes, and masculine and femininity. So as a teenager, I started naturally referring to God as mother and father. I thought that there's no need, if I'm going to give it a masculinity, I'm going to give it a femininity. And in fact, probably now, at the ripe age of about 38, I would perhaps describe God as an it rather than as a he or a she or as a combined he, she and it. And we'll talk a little bit about that because of how, for me, spiritualism is absolutely compatible. We dedicated an entire show to spiritualist principles, and we covered off some of the major ones, including some of the major organizations like the SNU. And I also spoke about my own principles at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. And Wimbledon Spiritualist Church had started its life as a member of the SNU about 100 years ago of spiritualism in Wimbledon. To this day, it is now attributed with United Spiritualists. It was also a member of the Greater World. So as a church in the last 100 years, it's gone through different organizations and different presidencies. But ultimately, we accept the leadership of that character Jesus Christ. Sometimes I refer to Jesus as a master or the master Jesus, but ultimately the teachings of Jesus. You know, for me, I got the honor of presenting one of Malcolm Robinson's lectures on who was Jesus and did he really exist? And we came to the conclusion that a character called Jesus did exist. And for me, it's important I talk about Jesus at this point because I never saw Jesus as the Son of God. I saw Jesus as a son of God in the same way that I believe we are all children of the universe. We're all children of God. And the reason I mention these things is because as my opinion has sort of changed and my philosophy influenced and different teachings and inspirers come from my guides, that's changed some of the labels that I've been comfortable sort of calling myself. And ultimately, on any different day of the week, I might consider myself a Christian spiritualist or a spiritualist. When I was in the civil service, I actually joined a pagan association for people that didn't necessarily prescribe to one God. And I spoke about being perhaps a pagan spiritualist. So at different times, different labels. And I've had the honor of meeting all sorts of wonderful people that call themselves spiritual or psychic, spirit, Christian spiritualist, call themselves Muslim spiritualist, Catholic spiritualist, Church of England spiritualist, or anything in between. And as I say, for me, it's very private, and each of those things are absolutely compatible. So I've covered off kind of like the masculine and femininity of religion. And I think it's interesting that if you think about just the age of time and you think about the age of religion and religious text, then often when you've spoke about a supreme being or a great architect of the universe, often that energy that's been attached to that has had masculine attributes. And of course, we normally consider feminine as something slightly different. And there is some wonderful bits of doing that in between, including all of the various people that might be referred to as prophets or gods in their own right, all of which, as a spiritualist medium, I believe that the difference, of course, between a physical human being and of corpse is the absence of that personality. And it's that personality that continues to have a life after the life they had on this planet, on this earth, and they live in a place of pure thought, of pure energy, heaven being that place. I also believe that heaven is that place where all incarnations resume and start, and therefore children of all effectively come from heaven. Although I've spoke and I've dedicated an entire show to reincarnation isn't necessarily part of my spiritualist beliefs, but it is part of my belief and my foundation. So they are some of the working assumptions I wanted to give you all, and I will share some of the different stories which have kind of led to that. Some of which is just going to be me and my interpretation in plain English. Some of it involves a little bit of history research, and some of it is personal experiences, because certainly in the area of me referring myself as a Christian spiritualist and being very proud of that, I was also a member of a local youth club. And the youth club, I later found out, was run by born-again Christians. And I spoke very proudly about my Christian spiritualism as my life. And they said, "Oh, you like reading the Bible?" And I said, "Yep, plenty of Bibles in my house." And they gave me a couple of chapters to go back and read. So I remember coming home with excitement and saying, "Dad, there's these lovely Christians that run the youth club giving me these chapters in the Bible to look at, and they talk about spiritualism." And of course, I did that today. I Googled religion and spiritualism and Bible, and almost all of the stuff that comes up is people who would consider themselves Christians that use often most of the New Testament to criticize spiritualist gifts or spiritualist beliefs. And they talk about spiritualism, spiritualists, they talk about mediums and healers. And they basically sort of talk around this, that if you're not doing it in the name of God or the Master Jesus, and you're not a Christian, then you're not to be trusted and you can't do it. Interestingly, there's very little reference to in the Bible, or indeed other major religious groups, that say that spiritualism isn't possible or that it's fraudulent. In fact, one of the conversations I had with my grandmother-in-law when I first met her about 21 years ago, when she found out her granddaughter, who was Irish Catholic, dating this spiritualist, she came to know me and trusted me, and she shared with me that she wasn't saying that mediumship wasn't possible. She had just been brought up around a culture of saying that you probably shouldn't do it It should be restricted to the priests and other people to have that communication. So I said that sometimes I do still very much feel Christian in my spiritualist teachers. I don't generally refer to myself as a Christian spiritualist now. I'm no longer a member of, say, the Greater World or any of the other beautiful Christian spiritualist organizations. But I do accept the leadership of Jesus Christ. And I do accept a lot of the wonderful stories that come out of Christianity. And on any good day, Christianity and all the major strands of Christianity are absolutely compatible with spiritualism. And there's some of the things that I wanted to talk about. In order to do that, of course, we have to think, and I've mentioned Jesus now a few times, we have to go back a little bit further. And of course, Jesus wasn't Christian. Jesus was Jewish. And you look at sort of Jewish history and you go back within that, you go back as well within Islam, you go back within Buddhism and lots of the other major religions of the world. And you find lots of common threads, lots of belief in the power of healing or the power of prayer, for want of a better word, the belief in something greater than yourself, perhaps a single supreme being or several supreme beings. Most religions talk and practice a life which talks about a life after this life. So I do think that actually most religions do have and own a bit of the jigsaw. It's only when you put all of the jigsaw together that perhaps we get a better flavor of the way the universe really works. But there's also perhaps just a lot of things we're not really capable in this 3D body of fully understanding. So I just want to read a paragraph now from a book. It's by one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite teachers, a guy called Mr. Ralph A. Steadman. There's two books that I'll be reading from tonight: A Practical Spiritual Primer and Spiritualism Under the Microscope. It's just a paragraph or two I want to make reference to. So I'm just going to start off in here about ancient times. And he talks about the fact in the lead up to this was, what did people understand about the message and what did people understand about the messenger? So in ancient times, the personality of the messenger and the content of the message that they brought were often confused in people's minds. Being a messenger could be a very rewarding occupation. If that messenger brought good news, it was often highly rewarded with great honors and wealth. However, it could also be a very dangerous occupation, because if the messenger was bringing bad news, certainly throughout history, they were often beaten, or if the news was really awful, put to death, and sometimes in absolutely horrific ways, often in the name of a lord or a god. And in fact, I've been watching a few shows recently that talk about our medieval history, and that word evil, I think, is in there for a reason. There were lots of people that did a lot of awful things under the belief that they were absolutely right and someone else was absolutely wrong. But to read on for the book, the same confusion between the messenger and the message arose just after the crucifixion of Jesus, because there were two ways of understanding what the mission had meant. The first was to concentrate on the messenger and to say that the mission was all about Jesus as an individual, Jesus being divine, and that all that anyone had to do was believe in Jesus, believe in him, and they would be saved. But of course, the other way, concentrating on the message, was to say that Jesus was a man who became the Son of God, once the Spirit of God came onto him at his baptism, and therefore he was showing that all humans have the ability to become what he became, provided that they follow a path which was advised. Now, there's a great difference between those two interpretations, and even the followers of Jesus could not agree which was the correct one. Some, like Peter, preferred the first, while others, like Nathaniel, Thomas, and James, the brother of Jesus, followed the second. For a while, the debate raged until eventually Nathaniel went off and found the Eastern Church. Thomas went down to India, and both preached their interpretation of that original mission, while Peter led the majority of the flock in the opposite physiological direction. James, the brother of Jesus, remained as the head of the church in Jerusalem, and then the center of a new religion. The split became final when Peter, who had never even met Jesus during his life, came down on the side of Peter, and through his travels eventually founded the Church of Rome. So Joanne says Christianity didn't start until after Jesus Christ. Yeah, absolutely, Joanne. You're on the same page as me. So carrying on this last bit of this book, when the new religion had become the established religion of the Roman Empire some 3 centuries later, the official dogma began to be created, but more and more confusion regarding what the religion was all about. Commentaries and interpretations of the Gospels proliferated and original texts were then changed until it became uncertain what the wording of the original text had actually been. Now, the reason I like those couple of paragraphs is it kind of talks about some of the plain English interpretation for me. What is the Bible? For me, there are some beautiful lessons, some beautiful teachings, and some beautiful stories in the Bible. But the Bible is almost like a portfolio. It's like a scrapbook of different stories and different teachings. You've kind of got all of the Old sort of Testament, lots of the Jewish sort of history. You've got all of the New Testament and different stories, hundreds, if not thousands of years now, different layers going in, different interpretations. And some of the interesting things that have been done from science there is when you look at it in a language that you understand, you start looking for words that appear wrong. They just don't fit in with the age of the so-called text. For example, if I was reading something now and I said this document is 100 years old and you must all listen to this, but then within that document I started using phrases like non-binary, or I started using phrases like Bluetooth, 5G, you would know from the age of the language or the tone of what I was saying that perhaps it wasn't as old. In 2021, we still write lots of law written on the masculine, the he. The law says that he must not do this or else he will be, arrested, for example. And, lots of people that are trying to write now are trying to take out that sense of masculinity from text, make it more of a they. Lots of people talking about ends of emails now and text messages about how they wished to be announced. And language is evolving, tone is evolving. But for me, the Bible, as you look at it in 2001, interpreted many times, lots of different stories, lots of different things. And ultimately, if you think about the power within Rome, there was an awful lot of politics involved in religion. And you could therefore argue that some of the stuff that has come in this has had that political influence. And ultimately, it became a sort of a playbook, a book of plays, a book of the ways that you should live your life, a book of standard operating procedures and the way that you should live your life within this religion. Not necessarily the original teachings of Jesus or the original mission. And ultimately, for me, you think about the wonderful things that Jesus taught us and the gifts he started to share. Those are the things that, for me, are very important. And as I say, I got quite sad today when I Googled Christianity, spiritualism, and the Bible, because almost all of it was negative. So my second reference I want to talk about is a little bit about biblical justification for spiritualism and the things that have ultimately influenced my philosophy today as a result of my research. So if we were to ask the question, are spiritualism and Christianity mutually exclusive? I believe the short answer is no. And that's for a good reason. Christianity, effectively, as Joanne was saying there, didn't start until after Jesus Christ, and it was based on the life of Jesus, the life and the teachings of Jesus. And in my opinion, he was not only a perfect healer, he was a perfect medium. Now, Jesus, we know, was in constant communication with a spiritual being that he often referred to as the Father, which was another way of saying God. And the whole of the New Testament is littered with references to the spiritual gifts and phenomenon available through this relationship, through this attunement. And Jesus displayed many of those gifts on numerous occasions. But it was also much later practiced, not just by Jesus, but by his disciples, by the people that chose to follow Jesus. And in leadership, you can't make people follow you. It's the followers that choose leaders. They chose to follow Jesus, and they then were able to use many of those gifts. So there's a couple of comments I would like to talk about in terms of the gifts of Jesus, the gifts of the disciple shown throughout Christianity, and of course, lots of other major religions. And if we first look at spiritual gifts in general, then there is something in the Bible, the letter to the Corinthians. And Corinthians 12:4 to 11, St. Paul mentions that some of the spiritual gifts, in some of the verses, he uses the word Lord, he uses the word God, he also uses the word Spirit. But all of those words, for me, mean exactly the same thing. This ties in exactly with what spiritualists believe. So when they're using the various gifts and they're saying they are working in spirit, they're effectively working in God for the divine, that divine energy, the spirit world. The only one of the gifts which in the letter he mentions, which is not really used at all by spiritualists, is this aspect of speaking in tongues. And the reason is that for me in 2021, there is no point speaking in any language which cannot be understood by your audience. In fact, he himself agrees with that view later and criticizes the practice in chapter 14 of the letter to the Corinthians. However, regardless of whatever gifts anyone may have, the emphasis in that letter to Corinthians in chapter 13 is that the greatest gift is love. And what is it I've constantly spoke about through most of these shows, that as spiritualists, it's about living our lives in service, showing unconditional love. So once again, spiritualists are in complete agreement with the Bible and the spiritualists and Christians' teaching. Now, if you think about clairvoyance, clairaudience, talking to spirit or hearing spirit, seeing spirit, there's a conversation of soul mentioned in Acts 9:3 to 9. And it's really interesting here that not only the soul was able to hear spirit, but people that were traveling with him spoke about hearing a voice or hearing voices too. And later in the same chapter, 10 to 16, Ananias also saw a vision and he heard a voice. Now, during the transfiguration, a word you often see within spiritualism, but during the transfiguration of Jesus, Peter, James, and John all saw Moses and Elijah with Jesus, and they heard what they described as a heavenly voice. Matt 17:1 to 8, and also in Mark 9:2 to 8, Luke 9:28 to 36, and 2 Peter 1:16 to 18. The two disciples saw and spoke with Jesus on the road to Emmaus, Luke 24:15. So mediumship, clairvoyance, clairaudience, it does appear frequently throughout the Bible. The woman at the tomb saw and heard an angel who announced the resurrection of Jesus, who announced life after death. Matt 28:2 to 7. Also in Mark 16:5 to 7 and Luke 24:4 to 8. Jesus then appears to the disciples. Mark 16, chapters 14 to 18, and Luke 24:36 to 49. Stephen sees a vision before his death. Acts 7:55 to 56. So mediumship appears throughout the Bible. And indeed, going back to that conversation with my grandmother-in-law, although she had started to believe growing up in Southern Ireland at the time that mediumship was wrong and you couldn't do it and probably fraudulent, as she grew to learn and trust me, she knew I obviously wasn't a fraud. And actually it then became her opinion that perhaps it was just something that I shouldn't do because I wasn't a priest. And again, she had often said it was part of her teachings and culture, not necessarily incompatible. In fact, we had conversations when she had traveled to Lourdes, and I asked about the founding of that place. And I said, for me, when Jesus's mother Mary showed herself, that was fantastic evidence of life after death. That was mediumship in its purest of forms. And indeed, there are lots of other religions, some more mainstream than others. But if you think about the Book of Mormon and the creation there, about a sort of a chap that hears voices from heaven or spirit mediumship. Perhaps telling him to dig up and find some golden records about stuff. Maybe that bit's not so true, or maybe he was finding some interesting knowledge. But constantly throughout religions, you've got this communication with ancestors, this communication from angels. Even when we talk about the birth of Jesus and the people that chose, the kings that chose to go to Bethlehem, lots of communication with people in that place I call heaven. Healing also frequents fluently in both the Bible and lots of other religious texts. I say lots of major religions believe in this power of prayer, this power of positive thinking. And within the Bible, there's 3 or 4 lines, various Acts, Luke, Mark, lots and lots of references to the gift of healing. They talk about Jesus performing miracles through that healing, and Lazarus, someone that was near death or had already started to lose his body. So lots of beautiful stories of healing done by the disciples, and lots of references of that. And in fact, there are lots of people that would call themselves spiritual healers, affiliated to lots of different organizations. Some of this healing takes place in Christian churches. Church of England, I know for sure, have healers. You go back to the 1970s, a wonderful teacher and healer, Harry Edwards, and he spoke about his people learning to heal, wearing almost like sort of doctors and nurses operators, going into hospitals, and healing being an accepted part of thing. Indeed, I dedicated a show where we spoke about healing. We had Leslie Knight on the show. I spoke about the fact that when I had my first major stroke and I killed 1/3 of the brain cells on the left-hand side of my head, and my neurologist said to me that a spontaneous recovery had happened. And when I asked him what that meant, he said no human intelligence involved. So there was already a medical term to describe healing. Now, Joanne Lewis says, so what I'm getting at is that Jesus' energy was of such a high vibration, he'd highlight his following gifts and raise the vibrations around him. Absolutely, Joanne. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if you're making reference to another part of the conversation I've missed, but yeah, Joanne Lewis, absolutely agree with you. Some people say that you could feel that energy or see that aura of people like Jesus for miles. The other spiritual gift then that you see in the Bible and again in other religious doctrines is this aspect of inspirational or direct speaking. Now, in a spiritualist divine service, we might call this an address. You sometimes have sort of guided or control or even trance speaking. But the most notable example of this in the Bible was in the Pentecost, where the disciples spoke to each man in his native tongue. Acts 2-4 is also mentioned in Acts 4.31. And there's this aspect of the medium being a palette, but when you surrender yourself as a medium to the will of something greater than yourself, actually the language is no longer important to you because you're allowing someone else, another personality, to communicate directly through you in a language that people understand. Now, the bestowing then of spiritual gifts and a famous prophecy of God giving spiritual gifts in the last days, or when young men shall see visions and your old men dream dreams. Again, Acts 2:1-7. Spiritualists use their spiritualist gifts continually, be that through service, through unconditional love, through the gift of healing or mediumship. And the final reference I wanted to make in terms of religious texts, Bibles and religion is dreams, because we've got a lovely lady that's been on Spiritual Psychics TV that does some dream interpretation, but communication through dreams is mentioned through, again, lots of the major religions, and particularly in the Bible, Matt 2.13, when Joseph was warned to flee to Egypt, and Matt in 7.19, where Pontius Pilate's wife, after a nightmare, warned him that Jesus was innocent and he should be freed. So dreams and the dream state, where our body starts to relax, our spiritual self, our higher self, become a little bit higher perhaps in vibrations and energy, and the opportunity to sort of talk there. So what does all of that mean? Well, I've given a bit of an explanation from some of my research around Christianity in particular, which I've had more direct reference to. But as I said, being brought up in spiritualism, my dad encouraged me to learn to ask questions. One of my best friends at primary school was a guy called Shyam. I remember going to his Hindu temple and learning about Hinduism. And I've been into all sorts of major religions. I've been fascinated by the stories and belief that. When I spoke about reincarnation a couple of months ago, we spoke about the fact that the people that are often prepared to perhaps use violence, particularly during the medieval period, to sort of force their views on others, have probably almost certainly lost their way. But of course, they get to the point they feel they're so absolutely right They cannot bear the fault of someone else not believing exactly what they do. But actually, as a spiritualist, I think that it's really important that we do have different opinions and we challenge the status quo. We respect one another and we respect each other's beliefs. And then together on platforms like this, on Spiritual Psychics TV, in spiritualist churches, there is an opportunity to come together and find some core beliefs and a foundation level where we can love and respect one another. And that for me is one of the most sort of important points of spiritualism and the way that I sort of want to live my life. I spoke about the scrapbook of stories, this portfolio that went to create the Bible. And I heard a brilliant story about the fact that when, if you like, the Church of Rome, the Roman Empire, when it was trying to decide what went into the story, legend has it they took something like up to 2,000 books into this room, and they put all these books on the floor, and they'd all sort of prayed to God and said, you know, oh Father, and etc. Please tell us which of these books are the most important. And it believes that something like 25, 27 or so the next day appeared on the table. Then that in itself for me is a bit of physical phenomenon, and it's fantastic. Now, what history doesn't tell us is who had the keys to that room overnight, if it was a true scientific experiment. But actually there was a particular person, which probably by pure coincidence, because these books that went into the New Testament were all those which were quite fancied by the young bishop who was an up and coming, I think his name was, is it Antheus? My dad's going to be able to pronounce all these things better, but he'd been canvassing for these 27 particular books anyway. So either it was an act of God, an act of brilliant physical phenomenon by spirit world, where they sorted through these several thousand books to find the 27, and they'd told him what those 27 to be, or perhaps as a human being he wanted to make sure that the experiment went the way he wanted it. We'll never know for sure, but actually, you know, that within the New Testament sort of started to become the different stories. Fast forward sort of 2,000 years, you've got the finding of things like ancient sea scrolls and alternative teachings. Richard James, producer, and I were talking just the other night about hieroglyphs and glyphs that appear in ancient buildings. Is there a chance that they wrote on existing buildings that were already there, even older than them? Because there is an element of history starting itself. You know, it's quite incredible to think that the year 2021 effectively dates back to the Roman reorganization of the calendar at the birth of Christ, us referring throughout the entire planet to BC and AD in terms of time. So certainly some major things going on there. Within Islam, they talk about Jesus as a prophet. You get the stories. But equally, you've got to believe then, if all of these people are being inspired from the same place that I call heaven, why do we get it so wrong? Why is there still so many differences? And of course, even within our own sort of Christian umbrellas or religious umbrellas, we can't get things right. You know, rewind again to the running of Henry VIII. And he's falling out with the Catholic Church and the creation of the Church of England. Think about all the people that lost their lives during that conflict. Think about the modern conflict in Northern Ireland between Catholics and Protestants. So within religion, people still find reason to argue. Look at all the barbaric stuff going on at the moment, the Islamic State, the different types, varieties of Islamic worship and Muslims. So if we can't get this right within own religious umbrellas, I think it's unlikely in my lifetime we're going to get to a point that everyone agrees with the same sort of book or the same sort of guidance. And actually, I don't think that's important. I think the important thing is that we continually look for those answers. We look for that inspiration. We look for our own guides and our own influences to come close. But as a spiritualist, I see almost nothing incompatible with any of those beautiful things in all of those religions. And I think it gives me quite a blessed point of view as a spiritualist to pick and choose the bits of the major religion that make absolute sense to me, for me to create my own foundation within spiritualism. I love the fact that within spiritualism, we can absolutely do that. You don't turn up at a church or a centre and have to show a card and say, well, I'm this particular type of spiritualist. I know that within some of the organisations you have to from a point of training, but actually everyone's welcome. There is this idea of doing what we can for each other, of taking personal responsibility of recognizing an element of destiny, but knowing that we have free will and we're in charge of making those decisions and we're responsible for the actions, for there is a cause and effect. So we're coming up where it is, in fact, dead on 8:45, and I said that this would be the point that I start to slow down, take a breath, take some water, and invite you to bring in your questions. So Rose Anderson just said, Spirit frequently visit us in our sleep state. Yeah, absolutely, Rose. I think that the dream state, the sleep state, is an absolutely great place for Spirit to come close. The final point then I wanted to sort of finish out with then was this element of, why I don't refer to myself as a Christian spiritualist anymore. And it's nothing to do actually with the Christian spiritualist organizations. I find them all to be pretty fantastic. And so my dad was a general manager at the Greater World for a long time, and I've got friends in some of the other organizations and movements. It often came down to the way that I was being treated by people within other aspects of Christianity and as me as an individual, because I found it so hard to believe that it was okay within certain parameters for mediumship, for clairvoyance, for healing to exist and take part and be recognized as an absolute fact. But it limited to the rare few. As a medium, I do believe it's a gift, but I believe it's a gift that everyone is capable of that attunement. And therefore, I find it hard to believe that the only time I can speak to people in that spirit world, in that place I call heaven, or the only time I can invoke the power of prayer is in a church. For I don't see anything special about the physical building. For me, it is a beautiful building, and our own church at Wimbledon, wonderful place, great energy there, definitely built in the right place and not by coincidence, but not necessary. If I want to send a prayer from the car park on the M25 or while I'm on a walk, then I believe that power of prayer can be just as powerful. And it found hard when I then got personal criticism from practitioners within Christianity who would say, well, if you're not doing this in the name of the one and only true God, then you must not be Christian, and therefore you must be the devil, or you must be one of the demons. As a spiritualist, I've often said that I don't necessarily believe in the devil as a character or demons, but I do believe in positive and negative, the yin yang of the spirit world. Nasty, evil people that die, they have a life after life too, and they don't certainly ascend to guardian angels in the first few moments in heaven. But there's this aspect of, well, there must be demons, there must be a heaven and hell. For me, that's all different levels of vibration. It's all different levels of things. And just because I don't do things in the name of a masculine God doesn't mean I'm not doing it in the name of God. For that beautiful passage in the Bible that has perhaps been interpreted many, many times and had words taken out of it, that talks about the fact that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Well, what if that word was just energy? So in the beginning was energy, and God was energy, and God was with energy. And without God, there would be no energy, and without energy, there would be no God, etc., etc. I'm not reading that, so I probably got some of that wrong. But for me, God is the sum particle. It's the umbrella for everything. And what better way of God showing their power, be that Mother, Father, God, or it, the God, the divine presence, the force, than creating us. And in that image, not necessarily as a masculine person, but in the image of a human being, a 3D incarnation capable of service and love. And for me, those things are absolutely compatible with all of the religions. And therefore, I can pick and choose the bits which make sense to me. I choose to respect someone, and I will always listen to them. I'm always open to influence, to be persuaded. But the important thing for me is that on my own journey, on my own experience towards that promised land or that paradise, I know that all the people along the way, some of them are going to claim to have all the clues, all the keys, the map to paradise. And I think, God bless you and good luck to you, because I think it's unlikely that anyone has all of it. And it's important for us own, because we're in the right place at the right time. The mission we're on right now, going forward. Go forward in pursuit of happiness. Do things that make us happy. Take experiences that make us happy. Have experiences with people that make us happy. Do that with unconditional love and service. So Charlotte Stubbs says, love that in the beginning was energy. Yeah, absolutely. And energy was everything and everywhere. Your energy, I'm energy, your beautiful dog is energy, and energy is everything. Energy is everywhere. That for me is the spirit divine force. Folks, I would love to hear from you. Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm bonkers? Do you think I've got it wrong? I would like to hear your thoughts and also your questions. Michelle Leah Murray says, I just keep it simple. Being a spiritual person really is just doing good and treat others how you would like to be treated. I think it's a very personal religion, so all leads to the same place. Beautiful, Michelle. Absolutely love that. And thank you for sharing that in your own words too. And who could disagree with that? What a beautiful philosophy and a great principle. Melinda says, I've always thought there is something, someone, but not sure what, who. I'm guessing, Melinda, that's in relation to something greater than yourself. And for me, that's the experience we're all going through. Things that we can only do in this body and this incarnation. Kelly says, I respect all religion, belong to none. Yeah, that's also lovely, Kelly. And just imagine how much the world would be nicer if everyone had that respect for each other. Julie says, I personally call myself a spiritualist and think of Jesus as a great healer and philosopher. To me, there is no religion in heaven. Yeah, absolutely, Julie. Also beautiful. Religion is a human-made thing in an attempt for us to try and understand, I believe. Joanne Lewis says, as we are unable to change others, the best thing to do is focus on and change ourselves and walk our talk. Joanne, beautiful. I really like that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, focus and invest on ourselves. So Shavonna Rook says, why do you think spiritualism is not openly accepted by recognized religions such as the Catholic Church? Is it controlled by authority going back thousands of years? Yes, in short, Siobhan, I think that in part the Christian. Now, there's a wonderful chap called the Reverend Val Owen. Julie Caswell, that was just on a minute ago, has done a lot of research, as has my mum, into him. And I do know that the Church of England had commissioned a report into spiritualism. And for a long time, they never published the results because effectively, I think they had ministers and priests within the Church of England that said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with spiritualism. It kind of takes the Church of England up a gear and on a step. Now, that is my interpretation of the report. But I believe Reverend Val Owen was one of those people that then found himself within spiritualism. You can find these reports. And I think a lot of it is about control. It's also about community. I'm married a Catholic, so I definitely respect Catholicism. I think there's some beautiful parts to it. But if you take the labels out, if you think about major religion, particularly the Church in Rome, someone needs to pay for it, and people that come into church are going to pay for that privilege. So there has been an element of political control, I think, behind religion that's influenced it. I'm not saying that inspires people within that religion. I think there are wonderful, beautiful human beings that get inspired to do that. And there are some incredible ministers and priests and reverends and people that do some great work all over the time. But yeah, at a core level, I think that religion has been open to influence. Let's think about Henry VIII. History teaches us that the one major reason that Henry VIII created the Church of England was because he'd fallen out with the Pope and he'd wanted to get a divorce. I was watching a program called Nightfall, which talks about the Knights Templars and how the Knights Templars quickly fell out of favour with the Pope and the King of France, who had borrowed an awful lot of money from the Knights Templars, and they didn't like their power. And yet these were knights dedicated to the church as soldiers and they would have taken that conflict back to the Holy Land. So yeah, I think control is a big part of it. We've spoke a lot on the Divine Service, at Wimbledon, that without people putting money in the plate, can't keep the doors open. So it's important to keep people coming back. There's also an element of Jesus, in order to stand through time the way he has, to making less human. And perhaps, depending if you're a reader of Da Vinci Code and Dan Brown books, you might say that bits that made him more human, like the fact he may have had a partner, may have had a child, just humanized him too much, and we needed to make him more divine as part of this fantastic character. So Hugo says, what's your view of the current state of affairs in regards to spirituality in the UK? Is there openness to it? Let me just read that question again. So what's your view of the current state of affairs in regards to spirituality in the UK? Is there openness to it? I think there is, Hugo. I still think there's an awful lot of discrimination. I'm thinking about a friend that's had quite a difficult day today, where social services have basically said that she can't bring up her child in spiritualism because it's too confusing for her, and actually it probably suggests that she has mental health problems. So it is a shame. I mean, spiritualism is recognized as a religion in the same way that you can call yourself a Jedi. So although we've got some credibility within that and there is great openness to it, I think there are still some problems and still some stigmas. But yeah, in terms of openness, I think that this platform in particular and the lockdown we've just had over the last 12 months, Hugo, it's given people the opportunity to just click on a YouTube link or click on Facebook and think, I'm going to have a listen to that. And hopefully for those new people and people that have come back, there's nothing I've said today that thinks, oh, I definitely can't, can't follow that bloke I'm switched off. If I've switched anyone off spiritualism from one event, I do apologize. But that certainly wasn't my intention. My intention was to take the truths of spiritualism out from the church at Wimbledon out to the people to share my knowledge of life after death. And I think there is a great openness to it. And I think that the Spiritual Psychics TV and other people going live has given people the opportunity to do it. Really good evidential mediumship is great evidence of life after death, but to the believer, no proof is necessary of life after death. To the non-believer, no proof is potentially possible. So there is an openness to it, but I think everyone's in the place they're meant to be. And for those of us that are on the fence and looking for a little bit more, hopefully they will find the evidence and therefore open to it. Absolutely. But I think that within spiritualism alone, I mean, I don't know how many. Dad will probably be able to correct me. I think there's probably at least a dozen different UK spiritualist organisations. I've mentioned a couple tonight, such as United Spiritualist, where I am an accredited medium. There is the SNU, the Spiritualist National Union of the UK. The Greater World still exists, and a load of others that we don't have time to go into. So the fact we can't even get it all right within the UK suggests that we're all meant to march to the beat of our own drum to a certain extent, I think. Nice question, Hugo. Thank you. Okay, so I've got a two-part question coming up. Olivia says, I believe there is a higher entity energy, but have never really distinguished it with a name or agenda, just an aura simply guiding. I do believe prophets were psychic mediums. Lovely, Olivia. Yeah, and I do agree with that too. You say, I also feel there are true tellings in the stories and poems, teachings, etc., in all religions, but I also feel we should focus on what was said, not who was saying it. Yes, absolutely, Olivia. It goes back to that message versus messenger, doesn't it? And the mission and the reason that sort of people were around there. So yeah, I think wholeheartedly. And I've mentioned the labels that I have for places like heaven. I like calling the spirit world heaven. At a scientific level, it's just a higher level of energy vibrating at a different frequency that we're not capable of communicating with using our traditional five senses. You have to sort of get to your six senses and clear that mirror in your mind's eye to attune. But I like heaven as a label, and therefore it makes it private to me. And yeah, why do we still read some of these old psalms and teachings? Because there's some beautiful, beautiful messages in there. Great. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for sharing. Rose, lovely Rosie. No religion is the truth, but they all have some truth in them. Yes, is what I was saying about the jigsaw, wasn't it? I think if you stick it all together, you could probably take bits from within it and get your best and closest understanding of the universe. But all of this, I think, in religion is our attempt as a 3D incarnation, as a human being, to try and get an understanding of something that perhaps we're just unable to really grasp the concept of. However, I think we edge closer through enlightenment, through surrendering ourselves to the will of something greater than ourselves, recognizing that collective consciousness power. Julie Caswell says Sir Arthur Conan Doyle believed spiritualism was the next step in the Christian church, turned its back on spiritualism. Hence his book, The New Revelation. Yeah, absolutely. And what a brilliant guy, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Some great stuff there. And I think it was the next logical step. If you think about human involvement or evolving as a human, that next step, then spiritualism gives the opportunity of these spiritual gifts that we've spoke about, not just in modern spiritualism and the Fox sisters, but you can go back right to the time of Jesus, and of course go back even further, because we've got evidence of the Aboriginals in Australia, and the ancient Native Americans, and the ancient Egyptians and the Mayans. All of these people talking about an afterlife, about communicating with guardians, with angels, or even with gods or aliens, but all believing in something greater than themselves. Hugo says, I find it interesting that in Matthew's gospel, after expelling the merchants from the temple, Jesus performed a series of miracles. Yeah, I mean, and there are some great stories in that. Hugo says, in short period of time, he went from being outraged to use divine medicine. This shows the inner certainty and consciousness action that characterizes the actions of extraordinary men. Very well put, Hugo. Clearly a well-learned person. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Much well. Thank you also, Hugo. This show is much better when it's interactive. I mean, hopefully there's more than just me and you, Hugo, sat here still watching, but making it interactive as well is really important. Benny Ty says, my father's house has many kingdoms. Yeah, many mansions. I've heard, Benny. Great sort of quote. And for me, it talks about, what spiritualism might talk about, the different dimensions within spiritual afterlife. Diane Elizabeth Cooper says, air is a spirit world, heaven. It does exist. Lovely, Diane. Thank you for sharing that. That's really nice. Yeah, Daddy Ray. I've mentioned him several times. I've never been embarrassed calling myself a spiritualist. Good on you, Dad, and you've certainly given me the confidence to do that. And sometimes that's been hard. We all have egos. You need a certain amount of ego to get out of bed in the morning, and your ego, your personality, your consciousness, it can be sad and it can be upset. I remember my sister being, so naturally proud of what we did within spiritualism that her plain English interpretation of this when we were about 11 or 12, she remember telling people at school that her dad chased ghosts through walls. I think there's the thrill of Ghostbusters in the 80s as well. But it was all about plain English and understanding of what we thought as kids. What are ghosts? Are they just spirits that died while changing the duvet and they got stuck inside the duvet and making strange groans? Or are ghosts the Ghostbusters, or a physical phenomenon? All of this absolutely possible. So I think we've come to most of your questions. If I haven't, maybe engage with us on the SPtv fan page on Facebook, or look me out at Ash Robinson Medium on Instagram or Facebook. It's been really good chat with you tonight. There's a handful of adverts and things I just want to share with you, if you would bear with me for the next couple of minutes. So I know there were people earlier on asking about mediumship, and every Saturday night you'll find a demonstration of mediumship here live on Spiritual Psychics TV on YouTube and Facebook. It's a different reader for you every single week, and that takes place tomorrow night from 8 p.m. Veronica Jenkins is the medium tomorrow night. Wonderful medium, great ambassador, does an awful lot of hard work behind the scenes as well to organise us all and organise our readers for Saturday nights, and also to share on Facebook all the different live things that are going on. And I've mentioned this place a few times, my home at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, and we have got our grand official reopening on Sunday morning. From 11 a.m. So we're going to have a small live congregation at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, but it's our ambition now to broadcast live from Wimbledon Spiritualist Church every Sunday morning from 11 a.m. That's with Reverends Ray and Jackie Robinson, the Wimbledon Spiritualist and Hackbridge Spiritualist Church community. We have a lovely meeting called Peter Goddard on for you on Sunday morning, and you'll have an address, you'll have some clairvoyance, some mediumship, you'll also have a reading or two, and there'll be reading readings for people on Facebook and YouTube, as well as potentially for people inside the congregation. So you won't see many divine services like that. Do check that out on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. I think I've probably caught up with most of the adverts. I've got another couple of minutes with just there's a couple of other questions that have come in. So Vicky Walters says, first time watching. I'm spiritual and I've now discovered how much I can actually sense, was taught a few things by a brilliant medium, and enjoy now what I regard as my gift. My thoughts on religion are complex. I definitely respect all religions, but dislike some people pushing their religion. Yeah. On others, yeah. Live and let live. Find comfort in many ways and you find yours. Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you for sharing that, Vicky. And I think, yeah, it's absolutely compatible with me. I've said the same thing, isn't I? Respect to religions, and don't push, don't bash people with your beliefs. People ask questions, try and be there to share that knowledge. Sandra Clifton says, this is the first time I've attended one of these meetings, and it's very interesting and it's all making sense. Lovely, Sandra. Well, a special welcome to you this evening for joining us. Amanda says, lovely talk, and thank you. You're very welcome, Amanda. Sandra Clifton says, making sense to me, and I feel. Thank you, Ashley and Julie. Lovely. Thank you, Sandra Clifton on YouTube. Okay. Julie's been chatting away to you as well, Richard tells me. Diane says, thanks, Ashley, for everything you said. Really inspiring. God bless you. Thank you, Di. Love to you too. Cheers, Ashley. Thanks, Richard, from Benny. Thanks, Benny. Okay, Livia chatting to my dad in Revive. I feel it's great to be able to educate. Lovely. Well, folks, it has been wonderful being with you tonight. You've got about 30 seconds to ask me any other questions as I sort of close for the evening. But what a great opportunity we all have to have met together in this virtual way and to share our thoughts. Thank you for your patience as you've allowed me to describe sort of what made up my philosophy, my influence from Christianity, and the fact that I do believe that it's private. Religion and faith is private to each and every one of us. And it's wonderful to be with so many people that want to respect each other and to send out that unconditional love and light. And it's absolutely great to see so many people keen to challenge the status quo, also do a bit of research. But, for me, it's absolutely compatible. I'm a very proud spiritualist medium. I have ambitions to be a minister within spiritualism. I think through my mediumship, through this, there's an aspect of ministering anyway, but I feel a real calling to that, which is strange because I remember saying to my dad, I hope you won't be offended, Dad, if I don't follow in your footsteps. I'm not sure mediumship and ministering is for me. We all come across different things in different ways of our life, and it's all part of that experience. Jade says, why do I dream then come true? Quite a fantastic gift if you're seeing things before they've happened, Jade. We've always said within spiritualism, we don't do fortune telling because it's almost impossible to see what's coming. But if you're getting sort of things that are about to happen, perhaps there's that element of being slightly higher up in the heaven sort of spirit world. They can see a path, they can see a route that's going on, and therefore they can see the most likely of outcomes. So if you're getting that in a dream state, sounds pretty fantastic. What you could do, of course, is look to develop that further. Get in touch with your local spiritualist church or centre. Use the new directory. I think Richard can post a hyperlink up to that in the chat room now. But you can find out a good circle leader or someone else to explore that more. But it's all for me about evidencing now. So if you're getting dreams, who's the communicator? Where are the dreams coming from? And challenging gently who those guides and inspirers are. Who is it that's telling you these things, and why are they sharing it with you? So yeah, go onto the directory, find a good circle leader or spiritualist church or centre, and start to find in a safe way, if you're not already doing that, Jade, around developing that. But sounds pretty fantastic. Okay, I think then, folks, that is a wrap. Oh, look, Julie got in there quickly. Lovely evening. The time has gone so quick. Another Sakura doors plough, let others cast the seed. Yeah, great way to finish that, Julie. Folks, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining us on Spiritual Psychics TV and being part of the show, Being Spiritual, with me. I've been Ashley Robinson. Good night and God bless.